To some of you, this might be a hypocritical statement, but I happen to have some expertise in the world of student voice and student politics, as for 7 years I was a student politician. I was with SAL Incorporated for 7 years, starting right from cooking the sausage sizzles, right up to being the president and CEO, which is where I left my role earlier this year. So we'll start by understanding what is student voice. Now, how many of you, show of hands, have seen the sausage sizzles at an O Week or at a university with people that look relatively young running it? Okay, quite a few of you. So that's partially us, but we also do a lot of other things. We are advocates, we are representatives, we help a lot with pastoral care, welfare, academics, especially if you're on the wrong side of the scale, but let's hope we don't go there. As well as tenancy, legal, and making sure that the voices of all students are heard around New Zealand by the people who need to hear it the most. And it's actually a very extensive family. If we take a look at these charts here, the blue over here, that's domestic students. Those are legally classified as students from New Zealand and Australia. And in the orange, we have the international students, who is everybody else. They make up much less of a portion of the overall student population, but they are just as important. Pay attention as well to the grey and yellow graphs. They are called EFTs. Now, hands up if you have a student loan or anything of the equivalent. Okay. Well, that's good to know. But no matter what you are, if you're a domestic or an international, part of your fees that you pay for your student loans or your hard-earned cash go towards EFTs, and they cover your tutors, your student services, your library, and your student associations and their subsequent advocacy programs. If we take a look at the next slides as well, you'll see how our student family is made up. As you can see, we have domestic students, as expected, making up the majority. But in 2021, we had about 75,000 Maori students enrolled and 61,000 students from the Asia region. We also have about 35,000 Pacific students and just under 19,000 students from other countries. All important demographics, and all have to be represented equally by the movement. As you can see, how it's split up by EFTs. Domestic students contribute the most EFTs, and it's followed by Maori, Asia, Pacific, and other international students, making up about the other 40%. And that's a pretty good split up. So that's how the student population works and how your student loan is split up. A portion of that fee goes towards student voice, which is your student association, your advocacy, your representation. So how is that voice used? Well, we use it in a number of ways to advocate for you on regional levels, at councils. We represent people nationally at government level. We represent within your own institutions. Some really good ones up here in Auckland, actually, but here's a few examples of international. COVID-19 took a massive impact on everyone in the world, really, but especially on the education sector. So in 2020, we developed the National Student Action Plan alongside NZ USA, Te Mana Okona, Taro Pacifica, and in 2021, we revised this plan alongside the National Disabled Students Association. Both have three common points. As a temporary measure, extend income support from studying to all domestic students as a temporary UEI. That's a universal education income which will pay enough to make living sustainable while still completing your studies. The second point is to significantly increase resources allocated to the COVID-19 Hardship Fund to ensure students have financial support to get through lockdowns and isolations. And point three, increasing funding for mental health support to ensure that students remain supported during periods of lockdown or isolation. Another thing we've been working on is Whiria Narau. I would need a whole other TED talk just to go into this, but we have 4 key points: whakapākari, whakawhānuatana, akona and mahitahi, all of which contribute towards student partnerships and student voice. Because bear in mind, we can make all the noise we want, but we have to work together with people like the Ministry of Education, Te Pūkena, institutions, and anyone who's involved with tertiary sector and how it runs, to make sure that those student voices I was mentioning earlier are heard at the places that they need to be heard the most, such as your academic committees and even by the Ministry of Education advisory groups that exist around the place. And this is one of the more recent things that happened not long before I left student politics. This is called the National Student Wellbeing Inquiry, run by the Green Party and Ms. Chloe Swarbrick. NZUSA, National Disabled Students Association, Te Mana Okana and Toria Pacifica are taking a look at what students need for their wellbeing in 2022 and beyond, so that way the net at the top of the mountain can actually be a net, so you're not falling through and needing the ambulance at the bottom of the hill, as is the case now. You're seeing a lot of dropouts, a lot of people burning out, a lot of people struggling. So that's the intention of the inquiry, and it's supported by a variety of student associations, such as SAWIT, where I was working for several years, Albany Students Association, Auckland University, AUT, Manukau, Victoria University, the list goes on. There's about 24 other partners through these associations, and they're all teaming up on this to make sure that the student wellbeing we currently have is improved and needed as required and heard by the voices that need it. So as you heard me mention in it, I was a student politician for 7 years. I left in April and I've had some time to reflect. So here are 3 things that I've learned as a student politician that have really made me a better person, and things that as young leaders or young at heart leaders you might be able to take on. The first one, always research a cause, because it's great to be able to support the things you care about, but if you're wanting to support something and you don't know what you're supporting, who you're supporting, or why you're supporting them, then it may not look the best. You certainly wouldn't look good as the kitten up on the screen here, who I'm sure is researching how to find all the cat treats, I think. The second thing I've learned is it's not always about you. Case in point, the 2020 referendums, especially on cannabis, I wasn't the biggest supporter of it, but there was an overwhelming student voice that wanted to support the campaign and get behind it. So, like this other kitten who I imagine doesn't really want to be wearing that, I had to put my own differences to one side to support the student cause and support what students wanted, as students are the ones that keep us in jobs, and if we don't work for them, then we may not be in that role for very much longer. The most important lesson, and I want you to really take this in if nothing else today, lead with your heart, but look after your mind. When I left student politics, I was burnt out, I was stressed, I was having a lot of anxiety issues, and I had built my life around the cause so much that I lost sight of who I was and what I cared about the most. And if you're not looking after your mind, then you can't follow your heart, especially when it comes to supporting causes and being the person that your friends and family can rely on and say, I'm proud of you and you're a decent person. So where does the student movement go from here? Well, where it goes from here, it's not up to me. There's a generation of amazing student politicians out there who will take the forefront. The student movement will be going long after this, as it was running long before I arrived. But I do know one thing. Kindness, love and compassion is the centre of what student politicians do. Sometimes the meetings get stressful, sometimes you work a lot of long hours, and sometimes it's crazy to think, what is this world coming to? But the current student leaders have that element of kindness, love, and compassion that will keep them fighting for the voices of students, will keep them going to the cause, and that's how I know that student voice truly will change the world. And if you're a young person at tertiary organisation, we'd love for you to join us and keep that voice rolling on. Thank you.